women in particular sometimes can have a bigger what do you call it, surprise to it, because women are super high performers a lot of times. And I've not worked with a lot of men, so I can't comment on that. And that's why I'm talking about men and women in this context. I don't mean to discriminate it by any means, but her manager told her to calm down. In spite of her reaction, the manager kept going on with the report. So the manager also didn't have any empathetic leadership. So she left the meeting feeling unheard, uncomfortable, and broken. When she shared this recording of this call with me, I told her that even though this is serious, the actual call was just a miscommunication because of the two different communication styles that she was using. Um, the male manager was using masculine communication and she was using feminine. Okay. What is the difference between the two? Masculine is analytical, power focused, shorter sentences, numbers and graphs, focused on the outcome, assertive, data focused, structured, detached, and logical. Feminine is emotional, intent focused, maybe longer sentences, storytelling, focused on the process, collaborative, empathetic, flowy, organic. It feels great. So when her manager was trying to go over the data that qualified her as an underperformer, she was talking about her feelings. And this happens all the time. I feel like this is one of the biggest reasons for the biggest miscommunications I've ever faced. In fact, Charles Duhigg wrote in his book, Super Communicator, that most conversations would work well if people just understood the communication styles and asked more questions about what is this really about. So for my client's manager, the conversation was about her performance numbers not meeting. But for my client, the conversation was about how all of how hurt she is from their evaluation. So she wasn't even talking about the evaluation. She had moved on to feeling the feelings, so she couldn't even process the data that was given to her. So after I told her the difference between the two communication styles on how she was talking and what her manager was talking about, she started to collect data. I said, don't agree with the performance improvement plan if it's not accurate. Instead of saying this makes me feel sad, why don't we go back with the right evidence to support the masculine information or masculine communication we've received? Let's go back with masculine communication so that we are both talking the same language. Now, of course, in the perfect world, we would want the manager also to use feminine communication to deal with a triggered employee. That would be empathetic leadership, but corporate America is not there yet, and we have way more of these incidents happening, and we're not teaching our managers to do what they need to do. Our managers are not empathetic yet, so we can't wait for them to become empathetic. We're not going to coach them and teach them. We're going to coach you because you're here and you're listening. So what can you do? That's what I always teach. Okay, so once we did that, I said, let's collect all the data. Instead of getting frustrated and going further down in her feelings, she took control, balanced the two communication styles. First, she created a thorough report with evidence that she had actually met all the goals and expectations. Then she took her feelings back to HR, backed them with logical proof, and then she tackled the triggers with her therapist, with me, and she was supported and heard from our sides, and we helped her a lot. She did not expect her company and managers to understand her feelings. She had the support system for all those feelings, but she did express her feelings so that people know how she feels because of all the data she had collected. What happened in 3 weeks was incredible. All her data pushed the company to launch an investigation into her manager and how he has been not really good with her over the months, and they withheld her PIP, so she won't lose her job. Because she switched and balanced communication styles. So she was able to get out of a situation where she would have been let go like the next day or the next week. But then this helped her buy some time because she's also on a visa. So this is the power of understanding communication styles. People who use one form of communication more than other struggle with processing the other communication styles. So meaning if your dominant communication style is feminine, you probably don't understand data really well, or you don't appreciate a data-driven conversation. If your style is masculine, you don't appreciate feminine. It's just a weird human thing. In reality, we should all have a balance of both, but to get to that balance, we have to practice it. We have to be aware of it, and that's what this this training is about. So this also messes up with active listening. So what happens is when the manager was talking about data, since her dominant side was feminine, she was feeling feelings. So what happened was she couldn't hear anymore. Her brain was thinking about all the things. Her emotions were high. Her central nervous system was on fire. She stopped listening. As soon as she stopped listening, that's where communication has actually stopped. Because now, if you're not listening, it's not processing. Same way, her manager shut down because her manager was talking in data and she started crying. And so the manager is also not listening to her and he's just talking. And that happens all the time. It creates a lot of frustration for both parties and it's not helpful to anyone, because the minute you lose listening is when the communication has effectively ended. So you must be present, you must listen. So therefore, it's critical to your success to identify what conversation style the other person is using and meet them there. Okay, I will repeat this again. Men may use masculine style more and women may use feminine style more, but this is not a gender-based thing. I had another client. I want to share another story. She worked for a Fortune 5 for 4 years and had a strong standing. Then she moved into a team with a female manager. In 3 months, she was also given a performance improvement plan because the female manager was 100% masculine in her communication style. My client S didn't understand what was going on as she was so used to a male manager who used feminine communication style. So this literally shook her and she didn't have enough data to support her stance. She was an active client when this happened. So as a friend, I told her to collect lots of data points. She worked on it, but was laid off eventually because she didn't fully understand the difference between communication styles. So I'm not claiming that this is the end all be all, but I'm saying that without understanding this, you will always be frustrated and never move forward from conflicts like this. This is the same thing in interviews as well. So in interviews, when somebody asks you a difficult question that you don't know the answer to, I know for a fact that the first thing my clients do, and you do this too, is you have a feeling about it. Instantly you go into, I don't know, why don't I know? They might think I'm stupid. And then you have all these emotions. You disconnect, you don't listen at that point. Now you miss the next question or follow up or whatever because you had all those feelings a few minutes ago. And then the next question is also destroyed, right? So in interviews as well, it is very, very valuable to pay attention to communication styles and stick to it and know your dominant communication style, because what ends up happening is that we want to speak in the feminine voice, we have feminine as our dominant self, but we're trying to be masculine a lot and we're ignoring our feminine self. It's just like that lion who was ignoring that he's a lion. We're ignoring that these are our needs and we need this. And then what happens is, since we don't understand the two different communication styles, during an interview, during a meeting, during a conflict, we succumb under pressure. So under pressure, our real self comes out. And the problem with that is that self comes out at the wrong time. So same thing with the manager, right? So if the manager is total masculine, the client is feminine. If she's talking about her feelings and the manager, the female manager, is constantly talking about her data, under pressure, even the manager is going to go more towards the masculine side because that's their comfort zone. That's their place. That's what they feel good at. Does that make sense? So it's really, really important to really understand the two different versions of it. And in interviews, again, because you're under pressure, you're going to end up having a lot of emotions and a lot of feelings. And we don't want a lot of emotions and feelings because they are going to mess up with your next answer, because interviews tend to be super, super masculine. That's just the nature of interviews for the most part. Unless you're interviewing for specific roles where emotional intelligence is required, empathy is required, feelings are discussed, whatever. But any roles that I've seen people interview for, especially 200K plus, this is going to be very masculine. It's going to be very much about strategy and behaviors and things that you've done differently. And so you need to make sure that you communicate effectively. And so the feminine part will actually come with your storytelling. The feminine part will come with your impact and why. And the feminine part will come with how you think differently, right? But the masculine part will help you keep the answer structured and to the point and help you get the role. It'll also help you balance those emotions that come when you don't know an answer, right? So this is why it's very important to understand the two different communication styles for interviews as well as conflicts at work. Now, how to switch between communication styles. So step number 2, how to switch the communication styles in interviews and difficult conversations. So before we switch the communication styles and learn about how to use them differently, I want you to think about your communication style. You need to understand your communication style better. Like I said, it has very little to do with gender. It has everything to do with you. Okay, so first question, are you more feelings based? Are you somebody who talks in feelings, I feel versus I think? Or you're somebody who loves data. Maybe you're quoting data to your family people members. Maybe you talk in analytical sentences, or maybe you ask people how are they feeling about something. Are you authoritative and issue directives, or you're collaborative and empathetic? I can tell you for a fact that I'm a very masculine mom, meaning when I am with my family or with my son, I'm always about let's do this, let's go, let's like no, like and my mom is collaborative and empathetic. She's more like, oh, how are you feeling? What would you like to do? And it's different.